Imagine this, a world where powerful nations, led by strongmen, no longer hesitate to invade, control, and reshape entire regions. A world where influence isn't negotiated, but imposed with military force and economic power. This is the vision that President Donald Trump has been pushing for in his foreign policy. It's a world where America takes what it wants, with no apologies and no hesitation. The recent events in Venezuela are just the beginning. Trump's swift actions there, a military raid that removed President Nicolás Maduro, show us the new order he's creating. A decisive victory without the long occupation that followed previous U.S. interventions. But behind the bold words and swift actions lies a far more dangerous reality. Trump isn't just interested in taking down a regime. He's sending a message: the old rules no longer apply. His Donroe Doctrine is about more than Venezuela. It's about reshaping the global landscape. And with it comes a world where imperial power, not diplomacy, reigns. This isn't just about one country. This is about what's next. To understand the true significance of Trump's actions, we must first look at the history of U.S. foreign policy. For over 2 centuries, the United States has tried to establish a dominant role in the Western Hemisphere. From the Monroe Doctrine to the Truman Doctrine, America's influence has always been framed by the idea of protection. But Trump isn't interested in protection. He's interested in control. When he speaks about the Donroe Doctrine, he's not just renaming a policy. He's redefining it. The Monroe Doctrine of 1823 was meant to keep European powers out of the Americas. It was about security, about preventing outside influence in America's backyard. Trump's version, it's about domination. He's sending a message to the world. America's sphere of influence is not just protected, it's expanded. From Venezuela to Greenland, from Mexico to Cuba, Trump is asserting U.S. power across the Americas. No longer is it about mutual respect or diplomatic relations. It's about raw power and the willingness to use it. And the question remains, where will it stop? To understand Trump's worldview, we must look back at the historical foundations that shaped America's foreign policy. The Monroe Doctrine was born in a time of European imperialism. It was a declaration that the Western Hemisphere was off limits to new European colonies. America wanted to create a zone of influence where it could act as a dominant force. But what happens when that doctrine is twisted to suit the needs of a new, more aggressive president? What happens when the ideals of the Monroe Doctrine no longer hold, when America's strength is no longer enough? Trump's interpretation of Monroe's message isn't about safeguarding sovereignty or maintaining peace. It's about expanding power and dominating the region one country at a time. But this isn't just about Latin America. This shift in thinking has consequences beyond the Americas, and the world is watching closely. In the early days of 2025, Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro was removed from power by U.S. Special Forces, a swift operation that shocked the world. It was a demonstration of America's power, showing that Trump's vision for the hemisphere was not just an idea, it was becoming reality. The speed and violence of the operation were praised by Trump, who watched it unfold from his Mar-a-Lago mansion. "This is amazing," he said, marveling at the effectiveness of the raid. But what was the true cost of this operation? Venezuela, a country with deep political divisions and a complex history, was suddenly under the control of a new regime. And America, under Trump's leadership, was poised to take control of its vast oil reserves. The question remains, what happens when a country like Venezuela is reduced to a mere asset in a geopolitical game? And what does it mean for the rest of the world? What Trump's actions in Venezuela reveal isn't just about taking down a dictator. It's about the mechanism of power at play here. The United States isn't simply removing Maduro from office, it's replacing him with a regime that is more favorable to its interests. America has long been involved in Latin America's political struggles, but Trump's approach is different. He doesn't hide behind lofty ideals like democracy or humanitarianism. Instead, it's all about leverage, power, and control. Trump's actions are driven by the belief that the United States has the right to impose its will on the hemisphere no matter the cost. By securing Venezuela's oil reserves and controlling the flow of wealth, he's creating a dependency on U.S. power. This is the core of the new Donroe Doctrine. The game is no longer about diplomacy. It's about dominance. And it's not just about Venezuela. It's about how this power dynamic will unfold across the Americas. Just when the world thought things couldn't escalate further, the second crisis unfolded. In the wake of the Venezuelan operation, tensions in Latin America began to flare up. The U.S. made it clear that any country resisting the new order would face consequences. Colombia, Mexico, Cuba, all were warned that they could be next in line. But it wasn't just the threats that made this crisis so intense. It was the speed with which Trump moved to enforce his vision. With military power in his arsenal and economic leverage at his disposal, Trump showed no hesitation. The world watched as his rhetoric grew sharper, his actions bolder. This was no longer just about Venezuela. It was about reshaping the entire region. And anyone who dared stand in the way would pay the price. The question now was simple. How far was Trump willing to go? But behind the geopolitics and military maneuvers, there's a deeper impact, the cost to the people. The citizens of Venezuela, caught in the middle of this storm, are facing the consequences of a power struggle that they had little say in. For them, the regime change means more than just a shift in government. It means their lives will be reshaped by decisions made thousands of miles away. It means families torn apart, communities fractured, and a nation struggling to rebuild itself in the aftermath of foreign intervention. This is where the real human cost lies. And as the U.S. extends its reach further into Latin America, the people who are most affected are the ones who never had a voice in the decisions being made. As Trump pushes his vision of dominance, we must ask, at what cost? For the people of Venezuela and for the citizens of every country that may fall under America's expanding influence, the price of this new order is high. The consequences of Trump's actions are not confined to the Western Hemisphere. As America asserts its dominance in Latin America, the ripple effects are felt around the globe. Countries that once counted on American diplomacy and alliances are now questioning their place in the world order. Europe, especially, is watching closely. The transatlantic alliance, built over decades, is now under threat. With Trump's willingness to act unilaterally, Europe is forced to reconsider its relationship with the United States. And it's not just Europe. China, too, is a significant player in this new dynamic. Having invested heavily in Latin America, China is now facing an uncertain future in the region. The global balance of power is shifting, and with it, the rules of engagement. Trump's actions are pushing the world back to a time when imperial powers carved up regions for their own benefit. A time when diplomacy was secondary to force. The question is, will this new world order hold? Or will it collapse under the weight of its own contradictions? As we look ahead, there are three possible futures that could unfold from this new era of U.S. dominance. The best case scenario. In this world, the U.S. successfully asserts its power without sparking widespread conflict. Countries, though hesitant, eventually fall in line with Trump's vision. Venezuela stabilizes under new leadership, and the region begins to prosper under American control. The U.S. becomes the unchallenged hegemon in the Western Hemisphere, its power unopposed. The middle ground. This scenario is more complicated. While Trump's vision for the Americas is largely realized, the resistance from other global powers, China, Russia, and Europe, forces the U.S. to make concessions. Tensions flare, but open conflict is avoided. The Americas are under American influence, but the global community remains divided. The balance of power is fragile, with every move Trump makes closely watched by rival powers. The worst-case scenario. This is the darkest vision. The US continues to push its agenda, but the world resists. Global conflicts erupt, and the old rules of international order break down. Trump's unilateral actions lead to widespread instability, and countries across the globe push back. Latin America becomes a battleground for influence, and the global economy plunges into chaos. The world returns to a time of empires, where might is the only thing that matters. Each of these futures is possible, but one thing is certain: the world is at a crossroads. As we reflect on the world Trump is creating, it's clear that the stakes have never been higher. The return of empire, where nations use force to impose their will, is no longer just a distant possibility. It's a reality that is unfolding before our eyes. Trump's belief in American exceptionalism, his America First doctrine, and his willingness to use military and economic power to shape the world have brought us to the edge of a new era. An era where diplomacy takes a backseat to raw power, where alliances are no longer built on trust, but on coercion and control. The question is, what will the future look like? Will we accept a world where might makes right, where the powerful dictate the terms of global order, or will we find a way to reclaim the ideals that have long defined the international system: cooperation, respect, and peace? Trump's actions may have shifted the course of history, but they have also given us a choice. It is up to us to decide which future we want to build. Thank you for following this journey. The world is changing fast. Let's be prepared for what comes next.